Great. Thanks, Bully, for that warm welcome, as always. And Becky, thank you for sharing such an awesome, thought-provoking talk with us. Really, really cool. So what I want to speak to you today about has actually got a lot to do with our thoughts and our minds. And so I hope that within the next few minutes, I would have been the provoker of even more thoughts here today. But before we get there, let's first have a quick show of hands and be honest. Who in the room checks their phone within 5 minutes of waking up? Okay, within the first hour for the buddies. Okay, so I think that's majority, if not all of the hands in the room. And I know I'm guilty, but the reality is that most of us are guilty. And luckily, it's not just us. A study done in 2016 found that 61% of people check their phones before even rolling out of bed in the morning. 96% check their phones within the first hour. Now, that study was done more than 2 years ago, so I think it's fair to assume that those numbers would be much higher today. But what's maybe not as obvious as that is the fact that most of the time, we don't even think about checking our phones. What I mean is we don't generally consciously decide to do so because it's really just part of our routine. And for most of us, it is a habit. So what that means is that from the moment we wake up, our thoughts are guided by what we expose our minds to. Whether it's a client's email or a friend's social media post, our thoughts are guided by other people from the moment we wake up, instead of us being in the driver's seat and taking control of our thoughts. Now, I'm not going to stand here and tell you to stop checking your phone in the morning because whether you like it or not, technology is here to stay. Smartphones are only getting smarter, and in this westernized society that we find ourselves in, if you aren't checking your phone first thing in the morning and juggling 10 things at once and working late into the night on most days of the week, then let's face it, something's probably going wrong. We've all got to stay so busy just to keep up to date, so cutting technology out of our lives will only mean falling even further behind in this crazy, fast-paced world that we find ourselves in. And it's because of how busy we are, making important decisions all the time, every day, that we go into autopilot mode when we do routine things. We brush our teeth every single morning, but we hardly ever think about the act of actually brushing each individual tooth, right? Our minds are just so stressed about how busy our day is going to be. And we eat dinner almost every single night, but we hardly ever think about the smells and the textures of what we're eating. Our minds are just desperately trying to keep up with the damn subtitles in an episode of Narcos. And what that means is that we're ultimately left with very few moments during the day where we can just simply be present, where we can acknowledge and really absorb our surroundings and just audit how we feel and how we think in a particular moment, which is a big part of the reason why so many of us can get stuck living inside our heads. That's quite a deep line, so to help illustrate what that means, let's draw in a few words of wisdom from the monk Buddha. Now, he said that we are what we think. All that we are arises with our thoughts. With our thoughts, we make the world. Ooh. And there really is a great deal of truth to those words. Robin Sharma, author of The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari, said that the mind makes for a wonderful servant, but a terrible master. And recent studies done by psychologists have revealed that the human brain creates 7 times more negative thoughts than positive ones. 7 times. That's deep. 7 times. That's a lot of negative thinking. And a lot of that has got to do with our natural survival instincts. Since the Stone Ages, our minds have just been hardwired to constantly be on the lookout for possible dangers. So, unfortunately, and as I'm sure most of you would have noticed, we don't live in the damn Stone Ages anymore. So we don't have the worry of a saber-toothed tiger hunting us down in the streets or getting trampled by a woolly mammoth on our way back from work. The reality is that most of us, and in 2018, have far less life-threatening dangers to worry about than ever before. But still, Today, millions of people suffer from anxiety and depression and a long list of mental health issues. In fact, research shows that mental health issues far outnumber physical health issues today. But why? If we've got so much less to actually be worried about than our ancestors did, why do we find ourselves more worried and more stressed than ever? And like most good questions, there is no correct answer. Mental health is one of the most complex fields of study in the world, and people get stressed and anxious and depressed for hundreds of thousands of different reasons. So what I'm going to share with you might not be the solution to great mental health for all of us, but it is a powerful starting point that all of us can certainly use. So when I first came across this idea of mindfulness, I had a very clear picture in my mind as to what that was all about. So I thought it was this practice reserved strictly for monks and yogis, and that I'd have to burn scented candles for hours and listen to tranquil music for it to even start being effective for me. So quite frankly, I wasn't all that interested. But of course, at that time, I had absolutely no idea what mindfulness was really all about. That is until a good friend of mine started bringing it up more often in our conversations. Now, if you're like most people, you probably wouldn't assume that Mike there looks anything like your prototypical monk or yogi. I mean, let's be real, not even a little bit, right? So to me, it was a huge surprise hearing him talk about dabbling in any sort of meditative practice, let alone him telling me about how beneficial he was finding it to be. So he told me about this Headspace app, which, as I'm sure many of you know, I see the heads nodding there. It starts off by giving you 10 free guided sessions, each of which can be as brief as 3 minutes a session. So now that got my attention because, hey, 3-minute session sounds a lot more doable than an hour of sitting on a pillow and listening to tranquil music. So I had to jump on this bandwagon and just find out more about what it was all about. And so as I started to do some digging, it turns out that mindfulness was something that was way more mainstream than what I imagined. It's something that athletes, musicians, public speakers, and so many more have been implementing in their lives and seeing all kinds of benefits from. Even successful business people, like my man Gary Vee there and Anthony Robbins, speak a lot about the importance of finding emotional stability and just being self-aware. So I was interested, cool. Started a few of my Headspace sessions, did a bit more reading, but I think I was still confused as to what exactly mindfulness was. How is it different to meditation? And honestly, I think I might still be a bit confused, but the way I've understood it is that meditation speaks more to the act of focused sitting than mindfulness does. Mindfulness can be practiced in your car or in the shower or when you have your next meal. In essence, mindfulness is being present. It's about acknowledging your surroundings and your thoughts in a particular moment, and it's about thinking about what is happening, not about what has happened or what could happen. But that's just the way I understand what mindfulness is, and ultimately it means different things to different people. So what I want to encourage you to do is find out what it means to you. And how you go about doing so should also be up to you. You might find that you really enjoy one of the mindfulness apps, of which there are plenty. You might find that a 3-minute session is not nearly long enough for you, or that you prefer to be jogging instead of being seated. Like many good things in life, you've just got to find what works for you. And so even something as simple as taking 3 deep breaths in the morning before you rush in and check your phone can have a huge impact on how your day gets started. When you decide to be the one in control of your first thoughts of the day, instead of letting others dictate those thoughts for you, you'd be amazed at what a difference it makes, not only to the way you feel, but also to the way you make others feel when they're around you. Thank you.